Thomas Rhett, Kicks 105.5. Good morning to you. I'm Sean Knight. Every Wednesday, about 10 minutes till 8 o'clock, we got my good friend Mike Barrett from Barrett Insurance Agency. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. How are you?
I miss you terribly. I've got to be honest with you. I haven't physically actually been with you in like 6 months, and I'm starting to have some mic withdrawals. You know, it's what it is.
You'll be the only person who ever says that.
So speaking of odd, like my longing and missing you,
Yes.
I was curious about this before we get into serious stuff.
Okay.
Odd insurance. Can you insure unusual things like Gene Simmons had his tongue insured one time for like $10 million? Is that something that you would do in the scope of your insurance, or would you have to go to a separate, like, fancier, weirder insurance company in, like, California?
We'd probably have to use one of our many brokerages that we have regular direct access to. That's a very unique situation, but, that's something that has been done. People do insure kind of wacky things, but that goes in the line with insuring events, too. I mean, it's something that's not a traditional thing to insure necessarily, but there can be options for it.
Well, you just said something interesting that I hadn't thought about. There are, of course, a lot of things being canceled right now across the board. But if an event should actually occur and you had to get insurance for it, would the rate for that be higher due to COVID-19 right now?
Not that I'm aware of, just because one of the things that we keep seeing is that viruses and bacteria are typical exclusions on most policies, although we have been trying to do a little research on event policies as to whether there'd be any trigger of coverage. As of yet, we haven't confirmed that there is, so I don't foresee that there would be any price difference right now. So the biggest concern is purchasing an event policy, and then, as this pandemic continues, would that policy reimburse you if you have to cancel the event? That's something that we're looking into as well.
Now, I've actually heard two different sides of car sales right now. One says, car sales are slow. And then I've heard that car sales are hot right now for some people, taking advantage of deals, taking advantage of the fact that they get extra money for being unemployed at this time. If I purchase a new vehicle right now, registering a vehicle, getting everything hunky-dory with motor vehicles and my insurance company, is it more difficult now than it has been?
So, last I checked, and it was a blog that was on the Vermont Department of Motor Vehicles website back, I think, on June 10th, I believe it was, maybe in and around that time. And it was stating that they are not, they're continuing not to do face-to-face transactions. Well, what does that mean? That means you can't physically go and transfer a registration now. You can follow the protocol on their website and mail in registration forms. Now, if you're trading vehicles or getting vehicles at a dealership, you're lucky because they have the ability to kind of kickstart that process for you. But let's look at it this way. Let's look at the folks who have either A, moved to Vermont from another state, which I'll focus on in a second, but also B, you're doing a private sale of a vehicle where you want to get a vehicle registered. How do you do that in a timely fashion? Well, right now it's kind of unforeseeable. It's one of those things where you need to go to the Vermont Department of Motor Vehicles website and become kind of educated on the process. Thankfully, registration renewals and license renewals are all things that you can really just do online now. But when it comes to a first-timer, that's different. Now, let's look at it this way. Let's say you're coming from a different state. Let's say you bought a house in Vermont and you came from New York. That's a great state to use. New York being a no-fault state. What does that mean? It means if you're in an accident in New York, everybody's own insurance pays for their own issues. You can still get charged with an accident, but if you hit somebody, their insurance will pay for it. Where in Vermont, it's an at-fault state, whereas they're going to determine whose fault it is, and based on that level of fault, that's how the claim will be paid. Now, why is that even part of this conversation? Well, that is because the state of New York has a different focus on how their insurance regulations are handled. Every state has their own laws. And let's say you are from New York and you want to get a Vermont policy. Well, if you get a Vermont policy now, your New York policy will cancel, and the state of New York will be like, wait a minute, where did your insurance go? Because they follow it a little more tightly. And that could lead to all kinds of problems for you, possibility of even license suspensions and things like that. So where does that leave somebody who's moved here to Vermont and is paying New York insurance rates and is desperate to get a Vermont insurance policy because the rates are going to be, well, geographically based. They're a lot cheaper. It's kind of hard right now, without the Department of Motor Vehicles, because you need to remember that a vehicle needs to be insured in the state in which it is registered. because you have to follow the compulsory laws of the state that you're registered in. And if you have a Vermont policy with New York plates, you are no longer compliant with New York compulsory laws for insurance. That's a big thing to think about. This is going to be the case for any state that you could be coming from where you're trying to switch over to Vermont insurance. There is a little leeway with switching over your license, because license is just that. You can register vehicles in multiple states as long as you follow the state's protocols, and have insurance in multiple states with one state license. So that's not as big of a deal. It's really the registration that's going to be the deal breaker for you right now.
Well, what's funny is that when I moved here 8 years ago from Michigan, I just rode around my car and kept my license until Jack Harris said, "Hey, Sean, you know what? You've been here for like a year and some, and that's super illegal." And I was like, "Come on, Jack, I'll take you out to breakfast to everybody's. It'll be cool." No, but so I totally understand.
That's the thing, I mean, if you're coming from New Jersey, Boston, New York, especially the metropolitan areas, and you see, it's like dangling a carrot in front of a rabbit. You see what the rates are for Vermont insurance, you're going to want to switch as soon as you possibly can, because you're going to save a fairly significant amount of money.
Mike Barrett, Barrett Insurance Agency, as he joins us every Wednesday for insurance questions and facts, things that you need to be in the know about. If you'd like to talk to him directly, you could do so by calling
748-5224. Visit us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury. Yes, we are open to the public. Wear a mask if you can, please. We are also online. You can get a free home or auto quote on our website, thebarrettagency.com. Also can find us on Google, Facebook, and YouTube as Barrett Insurance Agency.
Talk to you next week, Mike.
All right, sir. Stay well.